We just got done recording with Ryan Sturgis of True Facade Productions, and it was really cool. We learned a lot about what it takes to run a successful media company and really help clients tell their story.
Yeah, I can't believe he got to interview both the drummer of Rolling Stone and the drummer of the Wrecking Crew. That blew my mind. I probably could have talked to him for the whole hour and a half just about that.
Yeah, it is really cool to hear about someone who goes out and does that kind of work and then ends up still here in Mankato making this their home and workplace.
Yeah, I think this even to just like give our audience an idea of what it's like to be a production company in Mankato, start to finish, and what that looks like was really interesting.
Yeah, thanks for Ryan for joining us, and we hope you like this episode. Hello, and welcome back to this week's episode of the TF Cast. I'm your host, Willis Stout.
Hey, Grum here. The date is
15th of February.
15th of February, which I did not need to be reminded.
And I am your host, Jacob Bazes. Today with us, we are very pleased to introduce to you, or maybe reintroduce to you, Ryan Sturgis, owner of True Facade Productions.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
True Facade Pictures, Productions, Video, however you want to say it.
Yeah, Ryan, why don't you go on and just tell us a little bit about your work here, what you've done in Mankato, and how long you've been working in the area.
Yeah, cool. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I love what you guys are doing, and this is a super fun vibe in here, and it's really just an honor to be welcomed. My video production company, True Facade Pictures, we've been around, honestly, for like 12 years now, which is kind of surprising when I think about it. And we have done all sorts of different types of work in video and film, starting, originally with just the most basic promotional videos for the smallest of entrepreneurial endeavors is where it started. So and always based in story. So my passion for film has been a driving force behind creating the company. It was definitely, I my background is in theater. I did my bachelor's degree in theater and in music, but I've always been a super film geek and loved old classic movies and used to watch, films by my favorite director from their first films all the way up into their most recent films, and was a film theory geek, and I while I was in school for theater, was really fortunate to have the opportunity. I went to school out east in New Hampshire. I was really fortunate to have the opportunity to do some work in film in Boston and in New York. And when I was a junior in university, I went to New York City for a summer, and I got to be on set for like a couple of different films, like indie New York films. So they're like $2-3 million budget films. And, it was so amazing and mind blowing. And I just loved it so much. And I was so lucky I got to like be in the room during every take, because I was on the clamshell and I was doing playback. And I was the big film that I worked on then was this really, really horrible romantic comedy starring Matthew Modine, who, if you know, was in Full Metal Jacket with Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket. So I got this, the Kevin Bacon thing, the once removed. I get to be once removed from one of my heroes, in this horrible romantic comedy in New York City. But it was just so enthralling, and I loved it so much that I decided that I was going to, spend my time telling stories that way. And you have to make a living, as one does if you're not born into money. And so, it was a natural progression. When we moved here, my wife got her teaching job in theater. She's a professor at MSU in the theater department. So that's what brought us to Minnesota from out east. I started working in St. Peter at the cable access station there. And that was a cool job in video production. But right away, I also realized I had kind of an entrepreneurial spirit as well. So I decided to, try to find a way to make money telling stories through video and film. And I was making short films and doing all that kind of thing too. And so I started working with entrepreneurs in the area and doing more of a documentary style approach to that stuff. And it was just it was a good fit, and it's grown in a lot of different ways over the years. And we made our way through all sorts of styles and approaches for marketing in this arena and a local arena, doing shifting from like interview style to doing commercials, 30-second commercials, and doing spots for things like Snell Motors. And that was an early progression for us. And they did some, like, we got some spots on like the Super Bowl through them, and that was really a cool milestone. And then we had a studio here on Front Street for a few years. Those were really fun years, and just built a good reputation and started to build our client list. And then we had some really cool opportunities to expand outside of the community. And yeah, it's been a really great run. We've developed a lot of different techniques and a lot of really great connections and clients over the years. We ended up moving out and doing a bunch of work in LA, a lot of work in the music industry, and we've gone into production on some short documentaries and even a feature documentary, which we're actually in the process of trying to sell now, which is an amazing experience and full of twists and turns. And so yeah, it's there's a lot involved with it, but it's been an organic process and very much a learning curve every day. So in a nutshell.
Wow.
Could you talk a little bit about what it was like when you were originally coming up with this plan to move from that cable provider over to starting the business, what you saw during that period of time? Because I'm thinking that was like 2010, 2011.
Yeah.
Like what way did you think that the media landscape was changing that you could, because I think of that as like when the streaming services all like really started to ramp up as being like, you could make a big way in doing something like that.
Yeah.
Did you see Mankato as some kind of like a place where that could work, or what were you thinking as a business plan?
Yeah. Cool question. There was video production going on, and people were using, there were a couple people, offering video as an option for marketing, in the area, but it was pretty slim at that point. And the thing that I noticed was that they were missing elements that I find are really key, or that are important for what makes video a more successful or more beneficial mode of marketing, which is that there's an emotional element to it, right? So what I saw in the video production at that time was just transferring information from one platform like print or what have you to video. So there was not a lot of care in what it looked like, and there wasn't a whole lot of care in the story behind what was being conveyed. So what I found at that time was that I could kind of bring this idea of cinematic video production, and people were turning their heads to that. Like, first of all, we can create an aesthetic, right? That wasn't there. A lot of white walls behind people's heads, is what I saw at that time. So going back, to like, I was trying to find a niche, right? And how to separate ourselves or create something that people would be, something desirable at that time. One of the things was, let's create an aesthetic. So it doesn't have to look like crap. Like, it can look great. We can set up, a nice background and a nice backdrop and make it look nice. And it can look really good. And our camera movement can be somewhat cinematic, and we can have a feeling that looks and feels like make a movie or at least a documentary, right? And have that be part of what we're going to tell. But then also this emotional aspect, right? Of, or an emotional layer, right? So connection, right? Connecting to, at that time, really, we were focusing on these entrepreneurs. So like Bent River Outfitter was pretty new back then. And that was, they were one of our very first clients. And, Sun Moon Yoga, these charismatic people who were starting these, Sun Moon Yoga wasn't starting, but had these personal businesses. And the idea was, let your potential clientele know who you are, create an emotional connection. So there was room, I think, to educate this community a little bit on the value of that. And that's where I wanted to create a space.
Was that on cable still, or was that a lot of that content that was being created ended up being put in commercials on TV?
Yeah, okay. That's the other thing, is that we're moving into a space where we can use social media for this type of content, and that created room for a lot longer form, right? We were starting to do 2-3 minute videos, and so we were doing 30-second spots, but we were also moving into longer form stuff that was going on Facebook. And so that allowed us to get into that a little bit more. And then also videos on websites at that time. That was becoming more of a thing. And so that's really where a transition into different platforms allowed for us to dive into some of that emotional connection and, presenting something human, in the narrative.
That was kind of the
Especially going from like a 30-second spot to like needing to fill 2 minutes, I imagine that those like connecting elements and story become much more important, and really like giving someone a reason to care or even see it through to the end, especially if they're like dropping in on someone's website. And I've heard you say the word story a bunch. I wonder if you can like just elaborate on it a little bit, and like what maybe you find important about story, or like what you learned in helping those business owners tell their story in this area.
Yeah. That kind of, I think, if there was a word that separates our video production company from a lot of others that we've encountered, or even that our clients have, the way our clients have distinguished us, it's our storytelling abilities, and that care for story, and using words, and using music, and using B-roll, and using all of the layers as storytelling elements. And honestly, that foundation has allowed us to go from telling a story of a small endeavor like Bent River Outfitter to sharing a celebrity endorsement project with a company like Zildjian Cymbals that's been around for centuries, to billion-dollar tech companies. This idea that story is how we experience life. That's who we are as a species. We have always experienced life through story, and we as a video marketing agency now, we really have sort of distinguished ourselves from being a video production agency to a video marketing agency. That idea of story is at the foundation of our approach, and so it has really become, I think, the way that our clients see us is a clarity in story, and I think that it's an important part of who we are. We're like, my partner Michael Shalhoub and we're really curious individuals. What you guys are doing here, you're discovering, you're putting pieces together. You're telling a story, and it's what people want. Podcasts are so strong right now because you're getting this backstory, right? And you're going to learn about somebody's future, and it's all story, right? And we found that all of that can happen, whether it's in 30 seconds or 2 minutes or whatever it is. It can happen in marketing, and obviously, it comes back full circle to that love for film and what is a film, but in my opinion, the greatest way to tell a story in all of history. So story, yeah, to me has been the only reason really for doing it. I guess it's been the driving factor. It's been the reason why marketing has been able to become a passion. It's never been a passion of mine to be a business owner. It's never, like I love that. I've never been able to have a boss. That's not something that's worked for me. I've tried. The best job I had outside of owning my own company was being a pizza delivery driver because no one was on my ass about anything, but it's about, there's a passion for me there because of a curiosity and a drive to tell a story, regardless of how or whom the story's about.
Do you think that could have originated even from the theater too?
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Seems like some through lines with story and theater.
Absolutely. And theater, for the longest time, was the way that we was the entertainment of the time. I mean, it was the way that we understood history. It was the way that we understood the sociology. Theater was how we took ideas and pain and love and all of these things that were happening in our world around us and encompassed them into a few hours, and we're able to sort of vicariously live all of that stuff. And if you look, my wife being a theater historian, she can see so much about our world's history through the stories that were told through theater, right? And so, yeah, I mean, what's great about the fact that that story is in the center of what we do in marketing is that it really is an incredibly effective approach for selling what you do. And it's really regardless of the genre of business that you're in, regardless of whether you're a B2B company, whether you're selling to, multi-million-dollar industry, or, in a community our size on an entrepreneurial level. If you can convey what it is that you do in a way that's clear and that connects to your clients and your potential customers out there, you're simply conveying a story. So there's somehow or another, every single client that we have, we end up getting truly, authentically excited about working with because we are telling a story. So
How do you begin to discover that with a client? Like, say I'm, a client, and I'm like, we've got this really cool business. We've been doing it for a while, but I guess I don't know what story to tell. Like, how do you begin to scope that out with someone, or what do you find interesting in that?
Yeah. So, I think that word that you're using right there, how do we discover that? That's one of the very first things that we tell our clients, is that we're going to engage in a process of discovery with them, right? We need to understand what it is that they need, their potential clients, or employees. Sometimes we do recruitment campaigns, or sometimes our work is internally, culture, that type of thing. Regardless of what it is, we have to discover what it is that they need to convey, right? And therefore, we need to discover what it is that drives them and what makes them successful, what sets them apart. So, there are, obviously, for every client we have, there are certain things within the box, that are key elements to their success. They're going to have marketing messages that they know they need to get by. But then there's some things that even they haven't thought about for a while that we hope we can lock onto. And in our process, we tend to usually get our clients excited about things they're doing that they don't even recognize, that then we can convey and then frame and share with their clients and get their clients excited about. So there's always a discovery process. We literally make sure we just take the time and have it be a part of our process to allow that to be that starts us out. I mean, we've chosen to have that be part of what we offer as a video marketing agency. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, story to me is it's one of those things. It's always there. We are constantly engaging in story. Whenever we talk to anybody about anything, we're telling a story, right? But there are techniques and there are ways in which you can approach telling a story that will make it a good story, that'll make it an enticing and engaging and informative and an emotional and entertaining story, right? And that's where our expertise comes in, is trying to apply those things to our specific clients in their specific areas. And it's the same exact thing that we do when we embark on a documentary project. If it's a documentary project dealing with history, usually we're trying to discover something about the past, but you got to ask yourself why. Why are you trying to discover this thing about the past? Usually for us, we have some sense of knowing that it's about our present and future as well, right? If we're going to discover something about our past, we want it to have some impact, right, on our present, and therefore hopefully something to do with improving our future. So if it's about, whatever the subject might be, you got to know why you want to tell a story. And that helps you tell a good story. But yeah, we've been fortunate, I think, and to have our reputation grow around that idea, that message of being storytellers, and we really appreciate that. We do not take that for granted ever, and if there was anything to be known for, that we appreciate that a lot when people say that.
You mentioned doing a little bit of work in Hollywood when you introduced it, and I was wondering, as you've done that and come back here, how do you see the industry changing? Because previously, I suppose I would have imagined that you would think of that as a destination for like where like this type of media is created, and now I feel like every few months or so I end up seeing some kind of article about some new hip city that is becoming a place where video games are being developed, or film is happening here now, or there's some kind of tech industry popping up. And I was wondering if you think that is going to be true for film as well, or what your experience is creating film in New York, Hollywood, and Mankato are.
Yeah, I think that's a super awesome, important idea to talk about, because we are more and more every day, we're living in a more global society, right? I mean, where things that once could only happen under the roofs of those studios in Studio City can now happen in this solarium, in this condo in Mankato. I mean, it's, to me, I am excited about the fact that Georgia is now, a place where not half, but a good chunk of our streaming shows are being shot. Mm-hmm. I love this. I think it's wonderful. And I think, quick little history, Minnesota used to have a rebate, a tax cut for filmmaking back in the 90s. And so, Fargo was shot in Minnesota. The Mighty Ducks movies, Jingle All the Way with Arnold Schwarzenegger, was shot here, and there was a tax rebate called the Snowbait. Yeah, and so for a while, a whole bunch of movies were shot in Minnesota, there have been people working ever since it went away to try and bring it back. And I would love to see that happen. More and more every year, gear becomes more accessible. The whole industry, I wanted to get into the details. The whole industry is it's changing a lot. And when we started working on this film, just to clarify what happened there, we had our studio down on Front Street, and we were working with the music industry department. And they had an event, and they brought in a keynote speaker, and his name was Rob Shanahan. He's a music photographer. He was originally from Norwood, Minnesota, and he's an LA resident now, and many years, decades working as a photographer with a bunch of really famous musicians. And so he came to do the keynote on campus, and then the music industry department brought the whole thing in the evening down to our studio and did the event there. We met him and we engaged with him, and we just kind of went all out and just were like, this is an amazing opportunity. We asked him, how long are you in town? Can we interview you? And we ended up going to Norwood. We're in his old hometown, and we took a day. I took a crew, and we went and shot out there with him for a day and interviewed him. And then we cut a little thing together. And then Michael and I actually went out to LA and brought it to him and showed it to him and pitched this idea of a documentary. And, knowing that documentaries are a really, really hard thing to get funding for, and they're usually a 5+ year long process if you don't already have, everything in place. And that's exactly what it's been. And so it took us years to get all the production done. All the while, doing video marketing. We literally were like getting jobs trying to promoting music products like Zildjian and Gretsch and DW, and doing spots, celebrity endorsement spots for them, while then switching gears to talk about the documentary and paying for the documentary through getting those video marketing spots, and actually using the products to get access, and then getting access to the next artist to get us to the bigger artist, because that bigger artist liked that artist, and it was like a lot of ins and outs, and it was really an amazing experience. And being out in mostly Venice was where we were working, but obviously in LA there's all of these resources, government resources that incentivize production out there. This is starting to occur more and more across the country, and I think it's important that the industry starts spreading itself out into different areas. And I think that the more that that communities, when I say communities, I mean people like you guys and us that are producing independent films and doing our own projects, the more we come together and write grants and work with our local governments, and there's a nonprofit. There are a couple of nonprofits in Minnesota, but one of them in the Twin Cities is called Film North. They allocate resources to try and supplement filmmaking. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for the industry, especially now with the bottomless, content streaming, with the streaming situation. It's like content, there's never going to be enough content, right? I think that there's so much opportunity out there for, Hollywood and LA to no longer be the only place where this stuff can happen.
That's really heartening to hear, I think, because when I see just how much is out there right now and how amazing so much media really is, I think you can't possibly consume it all. It's not as if it's coming through on those 8 basic cable channels anymore.
Right.
I think what people will want in the future is to see themselves reflected in it. And
Yeah.
it's going to be local movies or something like that. I mean, the things you can do now with just basic equipment, like, it's wild that we can have this many cameras just to create a podcast where we all talk,
It is.
It's nearly unnecessary. I mean, yeah, but
Well, even
that's the
with
point.
like iPhones and stuff,
Yeah.
I've seen like when I think of story, there were more than one time when I heard like story mentioned when I actually thought of like a TikTok creator that I like who he goes by like American Baron, and he like tells these stories and he shoots it all with his like phone, and it's just so cool like that stuff like that's possible. And I mean, he might be in movies or a director sometime, but it'll be from like his ability to start with that like tool that almost everyone has
Absolutely.
and kind of get into it that way. So that's
Mhm.
pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I agree. I think that it's important to talk about and recognize that, it's the possibility is there. It still takes direction, which means it takes effort. And being aware that people, if you work towards structuring even trying to structure it. And so that's why I say, communities, filmmakers, content creators in local areas working together to try and help each other, develop content. There's stuff going on up in Duluth right now, where there's TV, there's a name for this, I'm blanking out on the name of the event, but like there's a lot going on right now that we should all be paying attention to as far as
Mm.
efforts and finance being allocated to help have a little Hollywood, in Minnesota, and we should
Yeah.
all be looking towards that. Not even just in the future, but like right now.
Yeah.
So it's very cool.
We've thrown out ideas of like why isn't there
A
like
film
why aren't
festival.
short
Yeah.
films like film festivals in the area, and just
think-
kind of like one at this point just kind of like wondering and doing a little bit of looking around, but like what is the opportunity that you kind of see for that?
Yeah, well, True Facade was a sponsor, a major sponsor for Bethany Lutheran College's Independent Film Festival. It was an international film festival. It was called the Speechless Film Festival. They did it for like 5+ years pre-COVID, and we had I don't know how many, but it was thousands of entries from all over the world.
Wow.
And we had hundreds of people come here, every time and stay. And our studio, we screened films at our studio on Front Street. There were screenings at the old Mankato 4 Theater down there.
Mm.
I have seen Front Street and downtown be a little Sundance. So
Wow.
it's absolutely possible.
Yeah.
It's the thing is that institution like Bethany, there's finance there's funds, and even they couldn't keep it going. It's about creating a community, and it takes a lot of work to sustain something and get it past that point of breaking even, just like a company, right? Or anything really. It's like it requires a lot of groundwork. It requires knowing that you're going to lose some money for a little while and then pushing past that point. And something like that requires a certain amount of flexibility and making sure that when something about your process isn't working, you fix it right away before, and you don't dig your heels in or whatever. But absolutely 100%. I mean, there's just so many possibilities with this medium, that we all love, and film festivals. We've got great film festivals in the Twin Cities every year, all the time. I mean, and there's no reason why we can't have them right here too. To me, it's about always anything like that. It's about finding the right people who are willing to commit to something for a few years, and you've got to look at all of the various needs for something like that and find the right people and put them in the right seats. You need good leadership, and you need people who are willing to follow that leadership. But 100% definitely possible. I've seen it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I was in the area at the time, but not super engaged in that part of what was going on, I guess. So
Well, there's some proof, I mean, you can get sponsorship for things like that from hotels. They want you to do that. They want you to bring people here from other countries and other parts of this country. So, yeah, it's a lot of work, obviously, to do something like that. And anytime when you have to start something, it's a lot of sweat equity. But they can also become, really important cultural events, and I love stuff like that. So, if you have a desire for
have to continue
creating
the
cultural,
conversation.
absolutely.
Heck
Cool,
yeah.
cool.
You had mentioned about how, well, number one, you'd mentioned about how accessible everything is right now, and I think that's really interesting because I just kind of started learning about especially video and stuff like that just a year ago, and I feel so spoiled because I came in like right when field recorders for under $1,000 and video switchers and all this stuff was so accessible, and I think that's like one of my favorite things, that is an easy way to shake up the industry and things like that. So I
Yeah.
think that's really cool. Also, you said you had worked for Zildjian DW and another drum company. What were you doing there? Were you doing like artist endorsement stuff, or? Heck yeah, that sounds really fun. I'd love to do that.
It was really fun. Yeah. So, what we were doing is exactly what we were doing with Bent River Outfitter and Sun Moon Yoga, interview based narratives and B-roll, and they were celebrity endorsements. So, as I mentioned, we were working with the photographer from Norwood,
Mm-hmm.
and he had already done shoots for companies like this. So
Okay.
we were able to do what we were able to do is, he'd agreed to do a film, to allow us to use his story rights to start producing a documentary on his story, and as a way of funding this film, we asked him to just simply give us access to the marketing directors of the that he had worked with, right?
Yep.
Just so totally cold call, just like I would with an introduction to a marketing director at Ide Bailey or something like that, right? And so we show our most relevant video to that marketing director and say, I think we could do this with, let's start with a low hanging, low key artist. And so we literally kind of worked our way up the ranks as far as artists go on their roster. And so one of the earlier ones that we did was the drummer for Earth, Wind, and Fire, and that was for DW. Ralph Johnson was his name, and it was so fun. And all of these guys are so successful. I mean, they're just like beyond, and they're also like charismatic, and
Yeah.
So I mean, these are 2 to 3 minute videos, just like we normally were doing at that time, and a little backstory on the artist. I mean, what was cool about this is that we got to be a little bit more sophisticated in the storytelling, because it's an endorsement of a product, in which case we are able to be a little bit more aloof about like selling the product, and the artists themselves bring something right to the product that allowed for a little less direct messaging.
Yeah.
Which was very well suited to us because we really love that authenticity anyway, and we were trying to do that anyhow. So that was really cool. And so what we ended up doing was like the way we ended up getting to Charlie Watts from the Rolling Stones was we would kind of backtracked and we found out who are his favorite drummers.
Yeah.
Right. And so we ended up and this was for both this was both DW drums and Zildjian, and we did this with Gretsch guitars and Ovation guitars too. We ended up doing a piece with Richie Sambora from Bon Jovi, and Elliot Easton from the Cars. We got to interview him, but what we did was, he was a huge fan of Hal Blaine, who is passed now. We have an amazing interview with him. He was the drummer for what's called the Wrecking Crew.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, so all of the rock and folk songs that were in the 60s in California. So like the Mamas and the Papas, the Byrds.
Bee Gees.
Yeah.
Beach Boys.
Yeah, the Beach Boys. Huge in every Beach Boys album. Yeah. Exactly.
Jackson 5.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then even before that, like Dean Martin and Nancy Sinatra and all that stuff. So he was Charlie Watts, huge Hal Blaine fan. He's also a huge fan of DJ Fontana, who was Elvis's drummer. So we ended up interviewing him. And so DJ Fontana, Hal Blaine, and Charlie Watts, we have hours of content with those guys.
That's so
they're
cool.
They're all past now. All three of them are gone. So it's really amazing content, and it's definitely a great value to our film right now as we're trying to sell it. And it's such a jungle, trying to find your way to sell it, getting your documentary where you want it to go. And there's a lot of ins and outs with that process, but we feel really lucky that we have, the audiences that come along with those names to do so, because we're getting to learn, I think, a lot more than we would have if we were dealing with any other type of subject matter where would be, that much harder to try and convince somebody, to invest into it, or what have you. So so the music, and I mean, again, my background is in theater and music. I'm a singer, so I was a vocal performance, and so I just had so much fun.
Yeah,
doing the music thing was just amazing.
The Wrecking Crew drummer specifically, I would have been more hype on that than even Rolling Stones.
I'll send you our content. We have a really, really fun piece that we did for DW. For Zildjian with him.
That's so cool.
He was endorsed by both those guys, so we have two pieces actually.
Yeah, literally like the most prominent studio band of like all time.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
And we met the guy who produced that film, the Wrecking Crew.
Love that film.
Yeah, you've seen it.
Yeah, it's so good.
Talked to him a few times. We were actually at Hal Blaine's 90th birthday party, which he then passed like 2 weeks later.
Dang.
Yeah. So we have the last footage of him ever playing the drums.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay, that was my next question, if you did performance videos or if it was just like seated interviews.
We rarely did that much performance, but in that case, he got up for everybody at the birthday party for one last hurrah.
Oh, okay.
Kind of deal.
That's amazing.
And then we did get to shoot Charlie Watts on stage.
Cool.
Prior to their last full band show, their last New York show as a full band, because it was before, it was the 2019, right before COVID. It was at the MetLife Stadium in New York City, or in New Jersey. So it was the New York City show, and it was amazing. It was that was all a lot of fun. But so is the work that we do here. I mean, we love being behind the camera and then taking that content and shaping it, and to us there's art in all of it, and it always comes back and is rooted in that idea of conveying something that has meaning. That's the difference between us
Yeah.
and every other animal out there, right? Is that we find meaning in things.
Yeah, I always get frustrated both in video editing and my main background is doing like sound engineering, both in DAW or live. And the thing I hate the most is when people talk about things so objectively, because like every single choice can have like an artistic direction, even down to the smallest thing.
Yeah.
And so like that's my favorite part too, is like really taking in all the content. Like right now I'm working on a stand-up series that we're working on and really trying to like find the vision and like scrapping hours of work because I found a new way I liked it or something like that. Yeah,
Cool.
it's my favorite part as well.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. What is the vision for the future? What's gonna, like, going forward? You have to sell this documentary, and you're gonna. Is it to continue? What's going on? Is it going to be more marketing in Mankato, or do you want to? I don't know.
Yeah. Vision for the future, right now, so post COVID, what I decided to do was really focus on how to run a company well and to build a scalable company.
Mm.
So much of our work up to this point has been artistically driven, which I'm so glad for, because I don't think we ever would have gotten here without it being that way. However, as you get older, you realize that it's so important to create sustainability with what you do every day. So, to be as like boring and pointed about that question, my 10-year plan is to have a media company that includes a really kick-ass video marketing agency that is a nationwide company. I expect we'll do most of our work regionally, right?
Mhm.
There's how many million people an hour and 20 minutes north of us? So, what I'd love to do is take our reputation and our great relationships here in Mankato and create opportunities for other content creators and our relationships with clients, and use our experiences here to grow strong and fast over the next 3 years and develop that the marketing strategies, and prove them, make sure that they are exactly what I think they are now. And that's really important if your company, for your company to be something that's going to, sail you to past your end of days. I have a daughter. I'd like to leave her something with this company. But and so, within the next few years, I'd like to cultivate all the wonderful things that we have developed over the last few, into as strong a company as it can be, and then allow that to really, really grow strong regionally. And we have national clients now. Obviously, I want to continue to grow those relationships as well and expand upon those relationships. But I want that media company to look like a video marketing. It's got video marketing involved. Obviously, I want documentary films in there. We've also always talked about some type of news. Whether it's, I don't know what that looks like. We have dabbled in news. We did a project with Connect magazine a couple of years ago. That was really fun, that we really loved, and it was business news, and that's something we've talked a lot about. So a media company that has a few capabilities under its umbrella, and that will allow me personally then to grow artistically into more documentary films, and someday I absolutely want to write and direct a feature film or four. I probably
Sure.
won't get there till I'm like in my 60s or something. But
Mhm.
but I have I have ideas and I've always wanted to do it. But the other thing though, I've never wanted to do it the traditional way, which is this rat race in Hollywood,
Mhm.
right? Which is kind of a ugly life. I mean, there could be great things and about it. And there's a few people, like a handful of people who just like have an awesome experience out there and have the incredible autonomy and don't have too many horrible skeletons in the closet in getting there, but not a lot. I mean, fact of the matter is that it's, and what's funny is you see more and more content coming out about
Yeah.
what that
it's like.
world is like out there. So, personally, I've known for a while that I've wanted to approach that in a different way. And I've also known that I was never going to, let it go either. So I see us, we're always looking at a documentary project or two a year. Sometimes they're going to be shorts. We just finished another short. It's a 25-minute documentary project. We'll always have those going on. They are important to us. We love them, and sometimes we get paid for them, and sometimes we get paid pretty decent. And then sometimes we have to invest in those and put in sweat equity and hope that we're going to get paid in the back end. Kind of like what we're doing with this music film. But to have a solid company is where my Michael and I are really focused on creating something that can create some opportunity for other people, for other content creators, create some culture, and to, I hope, bring something new to marketing. Even I think people don't want. I don't think whether it's B2B or B2C, regardless of what it is, I don't think people don't want to be sold to. People want to discover things, right, for themselves. And people, authenticity gets thrown around a lot these days, which is crazy because we've never lived in a less authentic time in a lot of ways. It's a conundrum. There's so much about us, so much about our society that is more authentic and real and good now than it ever has been, and so much of it that's not. It's a weird line, but I think that I would like to bring something to our clients through video, and it's such an effective tool that allows them to feel really good about what they're putting out there as a marketing message, and allows them to feel really comfortable with the honesty behind what they're saying, and allows them to reflect the true success of what they're doing in their company, what they're doing with their employees, allows them to feel good about the jobs that they're providing, the services that they're providing. There's a real passion there for us that we're discovering. And, bringing that passion through into our strategies, marketing strategies, is really fun. And we're excited about it right now. We're excited about, what we can do for relationships that we've had in this community for years now, the new techniques and new capabilities that we're able to bring with our subscription models, being able to hang in and, be a partner, a strategic partner with these clients, rather than just dropping videos at their door and saying good luck, helping them with that discovery, that engagement, that delivery, right, that distribution of that content, and then measuring that the value of that content. That's awesome, and we're really embracing that. And so it's our ambition and our goal and our experience right now to solidify our company, to just allow it to be as successful as it can be, and to scale it up. And we're excited about that, and to allow over the next decade to create a really strong media company in this region.
I do think you really hit on something there too when you were talking about authenticity. That's important because I do believe that people are resentful of how a lot of marketing has become recently. And I think now that this technology that we've gained over the last 10 or so, well, basically since the internet came around, it's part of our day-to-day lives. It's not going anywhere. And now I think people want to see themselves reflected in it more.
Yeah.
And so I think that it is true that, now that, like, streaming companies, for example, to me, I think they've really flipped the script on their value. We
Yeah.
had piracy in
Right.
the early 2000s, and now, like, people's streaming bills are coming up to be as high as cable, and it's like, well, what do you think is going to happen on the other side of that? So I do think that people are going to want that. So it's heartening to hear, someone with the chops to make it happen is like looking at consumers as people who don't want to be constantly insulted.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I really think that there we should we live in a market system, right?
Mhm.
And I guess I have always been as a human being, I've always had kind of a natural leadership. It's been something that has not it wouldn't be something that I would like congratulate myself about. It's just something that I would say has just been like the color of my hair, right? It's like not something that I did or earned, it's just something that happened to me. So I think about where is a good place to exercise leadership, and a business, a company in this country is a good place to do that because that's how our system is set up, right? And therefore, it's also how we interact and correspond with each other, right? And it's where our value systems are it's where we interact our value systems in so many ways.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, a lot about how people work is where they express their values. And, whether it's like, I don't want to like talk about the merit of the system itself, but,
Right.
like your contribution to society, the way it's currently structured, is largely judged by your work. And I think that, what
Exactly.
I gather from what you're saying is that whether you were a video maker or not, you're going to be a storyteller. So, like, and like, what is that but leadership to some degree? Because you want to take someone on a journey with you.
Yeah.
If I'm understanding you correctly.
Yeah, that's right. And so it for me right now, I'm embracing the idea of using business and company and my company to try and create good, and try to do try to bring something of quality and honesty to a place where traditionally there hasn't been a lot of that. And then also I'm excited also about, just exercising leadership within our own culture, and getting people excited about storytelling and about bringing authenticity to marketing. Yeah, it's video is a wonderful tool because of all the layers that you get to play with, right? There's all of the things. There's the writing, there's the sound, there's the visual. I mean, it's just
All those blessings.
yeah, there's just there are, yeah, every one of those planes have their challenges, and yet you get to create what I call the space between, right?
Yeah.
This thing that, I mean, it's why I named my company True Facade. You cannot actually get the truth across without developing a level of facade. If I were to just point my camera at something and leave it there and have it be as true can be, it wouldn't provide you anything. But once I've articulated this, for this front, right? Once I've articulated this thing and designed this, and it's the same with a great film, and designed this facade, then honestly, some of this truth can come through it. And so I think that can be the case with the best film of the year and with a 1 minute marketing video.
Sure.
Heck yeah.
Before the interview started, you had mentioned that you were also an actor.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about your experiences as an actor and maybe some of the stuff that's going on here too?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. Yes, I haven't been able to do a ton of acting in the last several years, but my wife being a theater professor, every once in a while, I do get a chance to do theater over at MSU, and I am so stoked because my daughter is 10 now, so like, and a lot of what's going on with TFP doesn't require all of my attention constantly anymore as it has forever. I have this chance to play one of my bucket list roles, which is Jerry from A Zoo Story, which is a very famous one act play by Edward Albee. But what's going on at MSU is a 2-act that he actually rewrote, or he wrote several years later. Edward Albee wrote a first act to the play, and so it's called At Home at the Zoo, and it goes up at MSU at the Andreas Theater, the Black Box, on March 22nd, I think. Yeah, is the opening night, and then plays through the weekend, the 22nd through the 25th. And I'm super amped to play Jerry, who's kind of this almost schizophrenic dude who comes upon a very together, not crazy gentleman sitting at a park and just goes nuts on him. And I'm pretty excited to get the chance to do that. And my experience as an actor, I started doing theater in high school, and then I went and did my bachelor's, and I love theater, and I did professional theater for a while. I was in professional Shakespeare company, and I did musicals for a while, and it's helped me a lot, with being an entrepreneur, certainly with being a video producer and being an interviewer, right? Which I do every day, all the time, so, but actually getting a chance to go and do like excellent, incredibly good American theater again is super, super cool. The last time I did a play like this is, I don't know, it must be 15 years, and it was when I played Stanley from Streetcar Named Desire, and that was back in New Hampshire. So I'm pretty excited for it. So thanks for bringing that up.
Just one follow-up question on that one I have is, you said it was on your bucket list for pieces to be in.
Yeah.
What draws you to the material? I'm unfamiliar with it completely, so
what draws me to the material, probably the same thing that draws me to my favorite books and favorite films. I guess it has something to do with the philosophy behind what the writer, where the writer's coming from. And I guess, in this case, there's so much, the writing is so good that it's really easy when a play is written really, really well. For example, Shakespeare's like the easiest example to give you, but like when a play is written really, really well, it's really easy to act. It just rolls off the tongue. The words roll off the tongue, etc. That's one thing. But the meaning, once again, the meaning behind the play and the meaning behind the words, the space between, right? The communication that occurs outside the words is why I love Martin Scorsese as a film director, or Edward Albee as a playwright, or any of these communicators, these storytellers, is they're able to use one thing, and they're doing one thing, and it's words, or a combination of words, music, like we're doing with video, color, sound, and at the same time, there's something else happening, and they're creating a connection between human beings, something that is a personal experience for each individual who's listening or experiencing that content. And somehow it's different for all of us, but is, at the same time, the guy is a, award-winning playwright. So it's why is that? What is it that he's tapping into? He's tapping into something about us, something about human nature, something about what drives us as a species, or something about us societally, right? That speaks to all of us, some truth, right? Some reality that we can't put our finger on, or that we can't articulate with words. And so in this particular play, it's literally about human connection, whether or not this character, Jerry, he can't connect to human beings, because his level of empathy is so significant that he just freaks people out by the way that he can mirror them and understand everything that they're thinking and feeling. And he's almost, he's this really strange combination between extreme empath and almost schizophrenic, to the point where he's like oddly incapable of understanding what people are are thinking and feeling. And so what draws me to the material is the meaning behind it, and that space between words, and that communication and connection that great stories, great literature, great theater, great film, great video provides when the art is high.
You have a favorite film? Like, could you boil it down?
Yeah, that's so hard. I have like a foundational. This is the film that I've seen the most, and that I think is, if I had in a vacuum, the best film that's ever made in my experience. Or I guess, I don't know. There's so many different ways to approach this answer.
Yeah.
All right.
We won't hold you to it too hard, just
I wouldn't answer this question.
It's really hard to answer, because the reason why it's so hard is because the technique has grown and shifted so much, right? Like, so there's like so many things recently now that I've seen that I just think are what I love about film, like new films, even bad ones, are that they have so much of of film history to work with. That's the greatest thing about film, is that almost every single one of them are there to look at and archive. But going back, It's a Wonderful Life, starring James Stewart, and directed by crap, I did it. I shouldn't have said directed by Frank Capra. It's people know it because of this weird little accident that happened in cable syndication. So it became like a really popular Christmas movie.
Yeah.
But it was like one of those magazine articles, type stories that was turned into a film. And if you haven't seen it, you should watch it. It's an amazing picture. Of course, it's about a man and his journey, about his meaning for life, right? It's like he thinks he wants to be an explorer and leave his tiny little town and travel the world and become an architect and become larger than life and see the world, right? And for one reason or another, he keeps getting stuck in his own little town. And then an incident happens where, he's taken over his dad's building and loan bank, and an incident happens where he loses his drunk uncle loses this money, and He's going to go to jail, and he's like, it would be better if I wasn't ever born. And so he gets a chance to see what life would be like without him. And he sees this void, right? He sees his mother, if he was never born. He sees his wife if he was never born. He sees his town if he was never born. And he recognizes the impact that he's had on his little community. And all of a sudden, this grand world out there that he was going to be a big part of doesn't have as much value as what he actually is a part of in his real life. This is a wonderful, wonderful film. And then, I've watched that movie every year for, I don't know, since I was like 10, maybe even less, maybe even younger. And then when I was in college, I saw Magnolia for the first time. Did you guys ever see that film?
I haven't seen it.
So that's P.T. Anderson. You probably know There Will Be Blood.
Sure, yeah, I've seen that movie.
So, and maybe Boogie Nights.
Yep.
You guys know that one? So Magnolia was his film that he made after Boogie Nights, 1997, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it's it's so good. It's so good. But, it's like when I was younger, I loved this movie. And when he was younger, he made this movie. And as I get older, I don't have the same angst, it's so things evolve. And, I guess, God, I don't even know right now. I'm honestly, I'm more into series.
Yeah, anything recently that's just stuck out then without it being needing to be your favorite all time?
Yeah. You want to know what I think is one of the greatest shows out there? Da Vinci's Demons. It's like a super not a whole bunch of people know about it. It's on Stars, and it's so there's an element of cheese to this. I don't know why I'm saying this on a freaking broadcast. This is ridiculous, but it's so good though. It's so good. It's like if it's about Leonardo da Vinci when he's young, and they don't make him gay. They make him like super hot and swarthy, and he's always doing it with some hot girl. But like he's, they do use his journals, and he's like always been a super, super legend to me. Yeah. They use his journals, and they use a lot of cool history, and then they just super that it's really amazing and fun, and lots of glitz and glam, and but it's also incredibly poignant. It's about the Renaissance, which I have always been super fascinated with, and I'm 50% Italian, so I've always been fascinated with Italian history, particularly Florentine history, because of the arts, and the Renaissance is an important thing right now for us. I think when in the 1400s, they looked back prior to the Dark Ages and medieval times to Greek times, and all of that incredible knowledge that was almost lost, and they brought it back. The Renaissance, right? They relearned and rediscovered those important elements of Greek society, and as we're like battling humanism versus transhumanism in our postmodern age, I think we should be looking at the Renaissance a little bit to recognize how incredibly amazing we just as human beings are without all of our technology, and how important truths about ourselves and about our communication and about our human nature are as well. So I have a lot of fun watching that show. And then, I mean, so many. I love the series. I always have. I mean, starting with like 6 Feet Under was my first one that I really thought that blew my mind. And I watched Deadwood, and I've seen that goes way back, but like, I love the series.
All right. Last media question from me. I want to know one indefensibly bad movie that you love, like just a real pile that you think is great.
Let's see. Yeah, okay. I like a lot of bad movies.
Me too.
Like I'm a huge fan of movies, so I like a lot of bad movies. So let's see. Let's pick the best bad movie that I like, that I love. How about a really bad movie? Gosh, this is a good question. I haven't had this question. I haven't thought about this in a while. Let's see. I would say that wow, this is stumping me for some reason. Give me a second. I'm gonna find one. Why is this so hard to answer? Why am I having a hard time with this? Because I watch a lot of bad movies. I mean, I'll watch anything and think, hey, I can find like quality in it. So let me think here. You got me, man. Let's see. What have I seen recently that was garbage that I really loved?
I watched Species last week.
Oh, nice! Like the original.
Yeah, I watched the first Species.
That's awesome. Yeah. See, I enjoy crap movies like that. Let's see. Like, oh, you know what? See, I'm just older than you guys. Well, but you mentioned Species. How about Dick Tracy?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've seen that movie. I wouldn't even clock. I haven't seen it since I was a kid, so.
It's pretty cheesy, but I love that movie. It's super, super cheesy, but I love that movie. It's got Madonna in it, and it's got all these guys dressed up with horrible makeup and Warren Beatty. That's really bad. But that's a fun one. Oh man, bad movies are fun to talk about. I mean, Evil Dead is like the best bad movie ever, and I love that. I was actually in that musical with my wife directed that. That's a musical, believe it or not. Oh man, that's a fun question.
Love that.
Yeah, that's tricky.
Well, if I
Howard
wanted
the
to,
Duck.
Howard the
that?
Duck, that's a good one.
Yeah.
If I wanted to try to find or work with or just learn about True Facade or Ryan, where would you send me?
Yeah, I mean, certainly truefacade.com or just Google True Facade. You could check me out on IMDb, Ryan Sturgis on IMDb, or certainly my contact info is on Google or truefacade.com. And social media, Facebook, Instagram, and if anybody's, I do want to say real quick that we're kind of actively working on a history doc, a Mankato history documentary right now on when Martin Luther King came here in 1961. We have a 40-minute version out there right now, but it's just a segment of it. And so we are this is a great platform for me to say, if anybody has any information about that event, one of the things we're looking into is how the event was recorded and archived. So we know it was by KMSU, but we don't know any details beyond that. Another thing is if anybody was there, out there in Mankato, if anybody went to either Martin Luther King's speech at the Centenary Methodist Church or at the high school in 1961, November 12th, 1961, Martin Luther King in Mankato. We're working on a project there, so please feel free to reach out to us on social or through our website on that information. And certainly we are always open to engagement, to questions, to film projects. Certainly, if you're a company in the area and you want to get some killer marketing done, give us a call. We love that. And you guys are awesome. Thank you for having me. I can't thank you enough.
Yeah,
and thank you for having this podcast and continuing to invite all sorts of people on here to talk about their lives and continue telling local stories. It's super important. And this platform is fantastic. And you guys do a great job. So thanks.
Thank you.
you.
Yeah, it was a real
Thank you.
pleasure to get to talk to someone who's been working in the space that we're kind of all coming into. So it was really a pleasure to learn about you and learn from you today.
Absolutely. It was my
Thank you.
pleasure.
Call it there.
Clear.